we before we turn over the shiur to Rav Michael and Rav Meir. And as we spoke, just as an opening, as we spoke about, the whole idea of the Midrash is to allow us to feel as if we're experiencing the parasha and to think of it as it was for ourselves, as we spoke about in the previous weeks also. We're leaving Exodus, we're going through that notion ourselves, as we spoke on. We mentioned the source from Haggadah night, and these are the parashot that we go through. And the Midrash in general is not only learning from the wisdom of the Midrashim and those that Rav Michael and Rav Meir have chosen, but also to continue learning and for it to be something for us both to think about and to feel ourselves and connect us to the parasha. So that's just a short emphasis again on this on this theme of the midrashim and the parasha. And with that, I will hand over the spotlight to Rav Michael and Rav Meir.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Moshe David, and thank you to all of you who in this cold winter night have decided to gather around studying Midrash for this week's portion, V'Shalach. I had several discussions with Rav Meir about which Midrashim we should learn. There were many different possibilities. We also would like to study Midrashim. The Midrash comes also to explain the text and questions in the text, but also the rabbis who gave the Midrash also wanted to give a message to their generation, and we want also for the Midrash to give a message, to see the message for the generation where the Midrash spoke to, but also to see if this message is relevant also for our generation. And amongst several possibilities, we chose a text which both of us are very much fond of and have taught in different connections, but it's worth teaching and learning. And those of you who do not know it, it's really worth getting to know. The text comes right before the crossing of the sea, and where the Israelites have come. You have to understand the situation. The Israelites have come out of Mitzrayim. They've gone already into Sinai, but made a U-turn back, and now stand really in quite an impossible situation, where they suddenly have a Pharaoh and all of the army ready to come after them, and suddenly it says that the water is standing as a wall to their right and to their left. And this is the text which we're going into. The explanation of the text and the question of the text is the explanation is a very special explanation by one of the very very big and learned rabbis who whose explanation is called the Meshech Chochmah. His name was Rabbi Meir Simcha, and he lived in a town. He was functioning and lived in a town in Latvia called Dvinsk, and therefore he's always called Meir Simcha from Dvinsk. It was a small Jewish shtetl, but they had very, very big rabbis there. There was another big rabbi there who was also one of the greatest authorities of his generation. We're talking about the end of the 19th century, the beginning of the 20th century. Rabbi Meir Simcha, he was a Kohen, also like Moshe David. He lived from 1843 to 1926. He was the rabbi of Dvinsk for nearly 40 years. And he was requested from many communities to come and be the rabbi there. He was also requested to come and be the chief rabbi of Jerusalem. He was a great Zionist, and he wanted very much to go to Jerusalem, but he felt that he couldn't leave the small community of Dvinsk. It was if he abandoned them, everything would fall apart. The other big rabbi there was he was called the Rogichover, who we can talk about another time. He was somebody who transformed all thinking of halakha, and it was a sensational rabbi, and argued with everybody, but he didn't argue with Rav Meir Simcha. They lived very, very well together and in agreement, and there was no infighting between these two Torah giants. And one of the things we just had, which was the Holocaust Memorial, International Holocaust Memorial Day, there were people who said that Rav Meir Simcha, he had a feeling what was coming. There was a discussion about Berlin and Europe, and he had an expression because many said he had an expression that they think that Berlin is Jerusalem, and he said, no, it's not Jerusalem. From there will come a storm which will uproot everything. And this was, as many said, that this was a kind of prophecy, and he wasn't into prophecies, but it was a kind of prophecy of what would happen later. In any case, this is a little background about the person who wrote this commentary, the commentary which is very important, looking at the generation of Jews from the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century. And we will come back to that. And again, I say that he talks about a verse in the Torah. Every time I lift my hand, somehow this hand comes up. I don't know why that happens. Every time, so it talks about that the water was standing as a wall from the right to the right and to the left. And can we get up the text of Moshe David? Okay, so I will just start, and Rav Meir will take over and give the serious learning. The waters were a wall for them on the right and on their left. And he talks about something general. He says, when one reflects upon the ways of the Torah, it appears as if the ritual commandments, this is a very difficult thing to translate what exactly the Hebrew says here, but this is how ChatGPT translates it. The ritual commandments, such as idolatry and sexual immorality, there are severe punishments. And the examples of these severe punishments are karet, which is excision. It's like that God will take your life, cut you off from life, from heaven, or stoning, or other forms of capital punishment. And we know the attitude towards capital punishment of our sages was quite strict, and actually our sages were against capital punishment. But in the Torah, in the written law, there was a capital punishment. That there were so many conditions connected to the capital punishment that it practically never could happen. That's another story. But the Torah, upon the rules for all kinds of commandments which you transgress, those were clear, and lashes also. Lashes, 39 lashes, those are for ritual commandments, very, very severe commandments are punished in this way. This the Torah says clearly. On the other hand, when it comes to, and again here the question is, I discussed this a lot with Rav Meir, how the translation should be. It says a word, civil laws. It's not, when it comes to things which are transgressions in the Torah, which have to do with human relations. That's what it more is, and character traits. It means something which has to do with how, again, it's very close to the first word, such as quarreling, but quarreling in a way where you transgress the laws of the Torah, or lashon hara, where we lie about each other and where we speak bad about each other, or gossip, or theft. Again, human relations. These do not have in the Torah lashes, either because they are prohibitions that can be rectified through monetary payments, that this is a much easier way of punishment than the severe punishments in the other, in the first category, or because they're prohibitions which involve no concrete action. This is what the Midrash Halacha says, that in Sifrei that that it's not the same thing as breaking the laws of Shabbat or idolatry uh, or other things which are under the first category. It's no concrete action to to gossip and so on, and therefore these have in this category a different kind of punishment in the Torah. This is the first thing which is said amongst which Rav Meir Simcha says. However, this is true only when an individual sins. The Torah talks about what the laws are towards every individual. But when the community comes corrupted, then we find the opposite. And I will let that over to Rav Meir to go into this, but let me just explain what he really is saying here. He is saying, like, we have the book of Jewish law called the Shulchan Aruch. He's saying we have two kinds of Shulchan Aruch. The two kinds of Jewish law. We have one Jewish law, one Shulchan Aruch, which applies to individual conduct, which has all its laws and all its punishments. And then we have another kind of Shulchan Aruch. And this is a Shulchan Aruch for society. And there are totally opposite kinds of rules. And you always have to know which Shulchan Aruch you're dealing with. Which book of law are you dealing with? Are you dealing with the book of law of the individual, where the laws of especially relations to God are much more serious in its punishments? Or are you dealing with the things which have implications for how society works, which in a way destroy society, but where you have slander and you have corruption and you have a little theft and you have things like that, where the punishment is much lighter. This is how he starts off. And I now have Meir, please. We can't hear you because you have your microphone silent.
Okay, now you hear me. It might be an advantage if you don't hear me, but I shall try to say a few words. Thank you, Rav Michael, and thank you, Rav Moshe David, for this nice evening together, and thank you to all of you who have come here tonight. So what Rav Michael said is that the idea of Meir Simcha from Dvinsk is, as you heard, I'll just repeat it once more, that it differs between the individual and the bigger group, the congregation, the people. Concerning the individual, these sins, because there are sins that relate to human relationships, we really don't have these strong punishments, as he said. Whereas on the other type of mitzvot, such as not to worship idols and not to to work on Shabbat and so on. There we have clear punishments. But then he says, this goes the other way around when we come to the group, to the congregation, and to the people as such. Because then the real punishments, they are because of that group of mitzvot where there is corruption and where there is gossiping and so on. And he wants in this text, now we get into the text again, and he wants to prove this. He wants to show that it is that way. And then he quotes the Jerusalem Talmud. You see where we are? Perhaps it starts with the generation of David. You see that? I hope you see that. Oh, here, thank you. Toda Rabba. The generation of David, King David, all of them are righteous, yet because there were informers among them. Again, we have a word here which is not a Hebrew word from altogether. It's called dilatorim, and it is informers. But people that talked things they shouldn't talk about, and they caused that there was a split in the people by their way of behaving, and they are called informers. They would go out to war and fail and fall. But the generation of Achav is a king in Israel, and he's one of the worst sinners we have among the kings. He married a woman called Izebel, and she was a daughter of a king, a non-Jewish king. And she brought all kinds of idol worshipping. And Achav, he was with her in this. And when they went out to war, the generation of Achav, that is, they had a lot of sins in the portion of Chilul Shabbat, to desecrate the Shabbat or idol worshipping, they had tons of it. But generation of Achav, though they were idol worshippers, because there were no informers among them, they would go out to war and be victorious. So they wouldn't lose the war. So here is an example where the Talmud Yerushalmi says, here it depends for the situation of the people, it depends on the laws that concern a relationship between human beings. And for when a community is corrupted through idolatry and sexual immorality, regarding to this it is said, the verse quoted now speaks about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, about Hashem, who dwells with them amidst their impurity. HaKadosh Baruch Hu remain with the people of Israel, even if there is idol worshippers. He doesn't leave them. But with respect to civil wrongdoing and character flaws, when there is weakness in character and there is civil wrongdoing, evil speech and discord, regarding this, it is written, be exalted above the heavens, as to say, remove your presence from among them. That is, sort of, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he leaves them. He's not with them anymore. He's with them when they are idol worshippers, which is very severe sin. But if they are together, if they are united, he will still be with them. But if they are not united, if there's all kinds of sins that cause a split between persons, between groups, and so on, then he sort of leave them. Now, that is, and he continues. We caught the text. We cut the text of the Meshech Chochmah here. He continues, and it's very interesting because we thought that it would be a bit too much. But I will try to give you the rest of his idea by seeing two midrashim that he works with them. His idea is that these two midrashim are connected one to the other. I would like to see the next midrash first, if you don't mind. Here, Mechilta Rabbi Ishmael. The Yerushalmi we've already seen, that's enough. But this, number 3, it says the following. They are, as Rabbi Michal said, they are standing in front of the sea, and behind them the Egyptian soldiers and horses and so on. And then the Midrash tells us Israel formed 4 fractions at the sea. The Hebrew word in the Midrash
Fractions is something else.
Factions. Okay, sorry, thank you. The Hebrew word is kitot. They were sort of divided in 4 groups. One said, let us fall into the sea. That is, what can we do? We have to fall into the sea. They more or less say that we have to sort of end our lives. That was the first group. One said, let us return to Egypt. One said, let us wage war against them. Let's fight against the Egyptians. And one said, let us cry out in prayer against them. So that they were divided into 4 groups, factions, 4 parties. Now, the Midrash continues. To the group that said, let us fall into the sea, it was said, stand firm and see the salvation of the Lord. He quotes verses that are said at this occasion when they stand in front of the sea. And sort of the Midrash let HaKadosh Baruch Hu answer all groups. To the group that said, let us return to Egypt, it was said, for as if you've seen Egypt, you won't see them any longer. You don't have to be afraid of Egypt. To the group that said, let us wage war against them, it is said, the Lord will fight for you. To the group that said, let us cry out, it was said, and you shall remain silent. That is, it's interesting to pay attention to the fact that all groups get an answer. Not an answer where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is angry with them. He explains to each group how it should be, how they should try to think in order sort of to lead their idea. That is one Midrash. Now I would like to go to the former Midrash, number 2. This Midrash, Yalkut Shimoni, speaks about what Rav Michael quoted in the beginning of this evening, and the waters were a wall for them, choma. And we should soon relate to that word, choma. Samael. Now, Samael is a figure that appears in some Midrashim and also in the later text, I think in Kabbalah and so on. It's kind of what we would call a Satan or something that we have in the beginning of in the book of Iyov. He sort of wants to accuse the people of Israel and show how bad they are. That's Samael. And Samael descended and said before him, before God. Now let's see what he has to say. Master of the universe, did not Israel practice idolatry in Egypt, and yet you perform miracles for them? He raised his voice to the prince of the sea, who became filled with fury against Israel and sought to drown them. That is, the prince of the sea, some kind of angel, the prince of the sea, he was influenced by the words of the Samael, and he got very angry with the people of Israel, and he sought to drown them. He wanted to sort of throw the waters on them, because they were working idolatry in Egypt. Why should they have all kinds of miracles now? And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu turns to him. Immediately the Holy One, blessed be he, replied, fool of the world, did they worship knowingly? Did they not do so only under coercion and mental confusion? And you judged inadvertent sin as intentional and coercion as willing action? HaKadosh Baruch Hu says something very important. You look at the people of Israel and say that they were sinners. Were they really sinners? They weren't really sinners. They didn't do it knowingly. They did it under coercion and mental confusion. You have to understand them, not to judge them as if they were great sinners. And then the prince of the sea heard this, accepted it, and he redirected the same fury which he had directed toward Israel back upon Egypt, as it is said, and the waters returned, meaning they returned from Israel unto Egypt. Now, there is a play of a word here, and the word for wall is chomah. And chomah is written in two places. In this place, it's written without a vav. And then it could be read chema, anger. And that is what he said, that he was furious, the prince of the sea, and he wanted to drown the people of Israel. But then he got the explanation of Hashem, and therefore he changed his mind. Now, okay, these are the two midrashim. Very often we can explain two midrashim as communicating one with another. There are such cases. Now, we don't have to say that this is the case here, but Meir Simcha from Midvinsk, he says there is a connection between these two midrashim, because he puts the following question. He says, why did this Samael say these words only now? He should have said it with the miracles when HaKadosh Baruch Hu took them out of Egypt, not the miracles in front of the sea. Why did he wait? Wasn't it more appropriate to say it when they were about to leave Egypt? Yetziat Mitzrayim? There he should have gone to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and say, do you help these ones? They practiced idolatry in Egypt. Why does he wait until now? And then Meir Simcha says, because in the other Midrash, it's told that they were 4 different groups. There were 4 different parties. And now, the Samael, this Satan, can start speaking. He has a reason to speak. When they went out of Egypt, Meir Simcha proves that they loved one another. They were unified. They were as one group, not 4 different groups. And therefore he says, them being 4 different groups, that was the reason that the Samael could have a saying here at all. Because when he went out, he couldn't, because when there is kind of corruption, in the corruption is perhaps a strong word, when we go into different groups, and every group is by itself, then we are close to what the Meir Simcha said, where the crucial problem for the group, for the people, is these things. When they gossip, when they steal, and so on, because these are things that sort of take the group and put it into pieces. And that is what they did. And therefore, this Samael could say his words. And therefore, he sort of uses these midrashim in order to prove his idea. His idea is, as I've said a few times now, again and again, is that the people of Israel being in different groups, in different parties, in different, whatever that word was beforehand, factions, that is bad. That is being on the shelf of mitzvot or sins that belong to the relationship between the human beings. And that is bad. And therefore, the Satan can start speaking. Then you can say, why did you take them out of here? Well, they were so and so, but he couldn't say anything when they were one, when they were together, all together. He also speaks, perhaps we can return it to Rabbi Michael, perhaps he also turns to his time in the text afterwards.
Before we go to that,
We don't
I would just like a little to expand on that because we discussed this a little between us before.
Perhaps if you don't mind, I'll put the question and then you say words.
Okay.
I asked beforehand when we prepared this, so what's this idea, how do we transform it in order to learn from it into our reality?
Yeah.
And that's the question. Okay, please.
Okay. I would like to, first of all, we can take away the text now, and we can see the people. I would like to just expand a little, just to get things into proportion, because I discussed this also a little with Meir before. It's not that you can't have different opinions. That's not the idea here. We're going to have different opinions and so on. We have to understand the situation and see it in the context. And in all these different texts, we have to see the context. I'll look at here. There are times, of course, when you can have. So today we have a democracy. We have people who have different opinions how we should solve situations and so on. And you can have different opinions about how we solve our situation, economic problems, society problems, and so on. You can have different parties, different factions. That's okay, but you have to understand here the context. The context of going out of Egypt at that time. When you go out of Egypt, you need to be together. Everybody needs to go out of Egypt. You need to be unified and go out together. If you don't go out together, if you start discussing, well, maybe we stay a little, maybe we go for a vacation, maybe we do something else, that it doesn't work. And the same when you stand at the sea. If you start arguing there, and you say, well, now is the time to have prayers, or now is the time to give up, or now is the time to go back to Egypt, and now then it can't work. This is the time to go forward, and everybody together. And I think that, if you look at that, you can compare with our situation here in Israel. We had after 7th of October. There is a time when we can have our disagreements. Also, then you should have our disagreements in respect, not tear each other apart. But there's a time when we stood after the 7th of October with the tragedy of the 7th of October, where we need all to be unified and stand up for each other and go forward. And this is not a time to tear each other in parts and so on. And the same in the Jewish communities around the world, both in Israel and around the world, where we need to be first of all be there for each other at that time, and not to say we do this, we go this, we go this, we go this. There are times when you can have those disagreements, and there are times when you need to be unified. And I think also in the example uh, which Rav Meir brought about from the text from the king Achav, he was a really bad king, one of the worst we had. He was the first who publicly took idolatry into the service, the first one, because of his wife or not because of his wife, but that doesn't matter. But in spite of that, he won big wars. He expanded the territory, won big wars, as it said, because there were not informants. And the stories are that the society was unified. There are stories there about a prophet of Adiyahu who was part of his royal staff, and he hid 100 prophets who Achav wanted to get at, and a lot of people knew about it, and they didn't tell. Nobody told. Everybody knew about it, but nobody said anything. So you saw again, you saw the unity in society, which is the strength of the society. And I think that is what I called before the communal Shulchan Aruch here. It was stronger than his idolatry. This is the communal Shulchan Aruch. And it wiped out his idolatry. And afterwards, after his children already got the punishment and so on the individual level, but if the society behaves in a proper way, in decency with each other, and we don't tear each other apart, that is what I think the Midrash here very strongly wants to stress. I just wanted to
Michael,
expand on that.
Michael,
Yeah.
if I um, just to reflect on what you're saying, but also the challenge that it's not so easy. If we speak about, for example, the situation of the hostages that we were in, and there were two camps from the very beginning, and personally, I knew people from each camp, and I knew hostages from each camp. So for those families, it was a question of what they felt was life and death. In the same way at the Red Sea, when these groups, for them, this decision of going back, maybe it's the wrong thing we've done and we should go back to Egypt, is a question of survival of life and death for them. It's not as simple and that makes it much, how is it even possible to get beyond that in unity when you feel the other person is endangering, for example, your own son or daughter, at that very moment?
Well, that's a very relevant question, and we also talked a little bit about it. But I think the answer is very much in how you do things, how how deep. I was this week in a television program. I usually don't go on television anymore here in Israel. I usually don't, but this is an in-depth program and so on. And I see now in the Knesset, there's every committee meeting which you see, people are thrown out and they shout at each other and so on. It's not very, it's not a good example for the next generation. And I was in the Knesset, as you know, for several periods. And one period I was not in government. I was head of a committee in Knesset. And we had people with very, very deep differences. we had very left-wing parties and Arab parties, and we had very right-wing parties, and we had the 660 meetings. And I didn't once, Moshe David, not once did I throw anybody out of a meeting. They're throwing now people out of every single meeting. And not only that, but only 5 times I had a vote. Every time we reached consensus. And it is possible to do that. And even in a deep discussion like the example which you gave, if you do that from a perspective that you understand the motive of the other side, and you do it out of respect, then you can demonstrate and you can, but do it with a language, do it in a form where you have a respect, where you have an inclusion, where you can keep the society together. We have all our soldiers, our children are fighting in the front together, both from this camp and the other camp, and are fighting, are being, some are killed, some are wounded, and and we have to think about that. And we have to think about that the society also has to survive the day after. You saw the joy we had yesterday when we had the last of, unfortunately, the dead hostage who came back, Ran Kwili, and 2 days ago, but today he was buried. And suddenly you saw the whole society, everybody. There's not one person who didn't cry of joy, who wasn't filled with happiness. Now again, some would say it should have happened a year ago, it should have happened, and that doesn't, but there wasn't that feeling. That feeling, the second, in 5-10 minutes, there wasn't one person in this country who didn't know about it. And the feeling of that, of course, people were sad that he wasn't alive, but the feeling that there was a solidarity with that family, that this is the solidarity with which a society can survive, and we can't only do it. We can't only do it when we are burying our dead. We have to do it also for the positive aspects of our society, and reaching out in ways where we live together, where we educate together, where we find solutions together in respect for the issues which are on the table, which are very deep conflicts in our society. And that's our challenge for our future. I believe the central challenge for our future. And this is actually what Meir Simcha, he talks about. Meir started implying this. Why did he write this? Why did he write this in I don't know, beginning of the 20th century? What was happening? The truth is, many people think that people stopped being religious with the emancipation in the beginning of the 19th century. That's not true. It didn't happen in 1805 or in 1810. It happened that people stopped being religious, happened in very short time, between 1870 and 1890. Very, very short period. Suddenly, what had been that everybody in the Jewish community was religious, was observant, and suddenly there was a big fallout. And Meir Simcha, he sees this fallout even in the communities in Lithuania, Latvia, the extended Poland, where still a vast majority of the Jews in the world were living. And he says, I know that many people, unfortunately, have stopped keeping Shabbat. And he says, this is a communal sin. On the individual level, it's individual level. But this is a communal sin. But if at least we can keep together as communities, if at least we can live decently with each other, then God will be with us. In our impurity, God will not leave us. If we start an infighting with each other, then God forbid it will be total destruction. Then God will leave us. But he doesn't accept that people stop keeping Shabbat, but if at least we can live decently in communities, we can gather around principles, and he was a great Zionist. He wanted very much that should be one of the principles. Then there is a chance for the future of the Jewish people. This is the message he, with these examples, give. Of Meir.
I would like to say a few words, not too many, because we are. No, it's okay. There's one point where I might disagree, or I didn't perhaps understand correctly what Rav Michael said. I don't want to put us in two factions, but I would like to say the following. It is true, for sure, what Rav Michael said, that these were special cases standing in front of the Red Sea. We have to be united in order to go further on. But I think there is also a message for all times, not only for these special times. That is, of course, true. I think there's a message for all times, and it's a message for every individual, because every individual is a part of the communal. And every individual, I think, according to this, should be able, to a certain extent, to leave his opinion. Let's say it's a higher goal to be together in a decent way, that Rav Michael said, put it, than to be with my principle. And that's true all the time. You have to educate yourself to be there, and then you will be able to be together with people that are different opinions. And as Rav Michael said, the problem is today sometimes that it's with hatred, and it's with inability to understand someone else. But if we should not be in different factions, even though we have different opinions, we have all together, we have to change ourselves. That's the first thing we have to do. And to be able to say, I don't cling to my opinion, I'm able to leave it a bit. I'm able to understand. And I think perhaps that the Midrashim also say something in that way, because when HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the one Midrash says to the prince of the sea, listen, you were mistaken here. See who are the people of Israel. They weren't sinners, and so on and so on. And he was able to hear it, and he was able to change his mind. And also in the other Midrash, every faction, every group gets his explanation by Kadosh Baruch Hu. Listen, you say it that way, but it might be in another way. Perhaps now you should be silent. Perhaps now you shouldn't be afraid of Egypt and so on. We should be able to accept that someone says something else and be able to open our ears in order to hear it and change. If we will be stubborn and we with our own opinion all the time, it won't work. And I think that is one of the messages, apart from the important things that we heard beforehand. One of the messages here to every one of us.
I leave my opinion and I accept what Rav Meir said.
And I rest my case.
Just to highlight that the pasuk that we're talking about, Hamayim lem choma miminam umismolam, from the right and from the left. In other words, that the defense of Am Yisrael that were defended, even going back to the Pshat, was from the right and from the left. That connection of the right and the left was a defense for them as they were going through.
Yeah.
So now everyone is in agreement.
No, you don't.
That's what your teacher, our friend Rav Menachem, always said, that we need the right and the left. And we were clapping the hands always. The right and the left go together.
Very nice.
So thank you very much for, first of all, bringing us the Meshech Chochma, which is a beautiful, a beautiful interpretation and drash, but also bringing it in a way which is relevant. But thank you, Rav Meir and Rav Michael, because it ties together different midrashim together, and all we learned tonight was were midrashim, right, on one pasuk, right, or even half of a pasuk. So there's so much more to learn, and as we saw tonight, to take it to a place of relevance, and that's what's Bezrat Hashem. May we, even in the way that we speak to others within our own communities, have this teaching in mind that we learned tonight, that when we have difference of opinion, or just a sense of a community being together, realizing how important that is, that if we are together, then Hashem is with us, as we learned tonight, very powerfully. So thank you for teaching us tonight, Rav Michael, Rav Meir. Thank you all for being with us and for learning with us. And Bezrat Hashem, we hope that you that you take this with you. We had a question. Tikva Shira asked, I just see now, why 4 groups? We can leave that up to each of you to try to think. The question was about, we had 4 different groups of opinion. Whether that means something is a good question. Why is it that Am Yisrael was split into 4? Usually, even today, you have the right, the left, as we just said. It's an interesting question. Thank you for the question. It's something more to reflect on as you listen to the wonderful shira of this week, of the men, of the women, right? That we just learned one pasuk of tonight together. So, Toda Rabba, Erev Tov, Laila Tov, and Shabbat Shalom to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.